Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock. This is Capitol View.
And welcome to Capitol View. I'm Roby Brock. Thank you for joining us. Just a little over 1 week until Election Day. Early voting has started. The debates have concluded, and it's all about voter turnout at this juncture. In the race for Arkansas governor, Democrat Chris Jones and Republican Sarah Huckabee Sanders are competing with Libertarian Ricky Dale Harrington Jr., who now joins us in studio. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good.
You doing well?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing the best that I can. If it got any better, I wouldn't know how to act.
All right. I was watching the gubernatorial debate on Arkansas PBS a little over a week ago, and the friend that I was watching it with told me that your voice was so smooth and silky that he wants you to speak at his funeral. So do you do that on a regular basis? Can I tell him that you're for hire?
I don't do too many funerals on a regular basis, but I am available. I am available.
All right. Before we get into some policy, just kind of off the top, let's talk a little bit about the Libertarian Party of Arkansas and where some things stand. You are charged with getting at least 3% to qualify as a political party going forward. There's also been some litigation that has been deemed in the Libertarian Party of Arkansas's favor. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it all started when the law was passed in 2019 off the heels of the 2018 election, the gubernatorial election, with Mark West getting 2.9%. And Republicans in the legislature passed a law increasing that threshold and also decreasing the amount of time that we had to 90 days to collect all those signatures, from 10,000 to almost 27,000. We filed a lawsuit in federal court that gave us an injunction to where I was able to run against Senator Cotton in 2020. And here recently we had a victory in court declaring that law on 6 of those issues in the law as unconstitutional. So it was a great victory for us, but not only for us, but for the people of Arkansas, because we're trying to open it up as a party for more people to be able to participate in the political discourse in our state.
3% still a low margin right there. Are you going to get 3%? Are you running for 3%, or are you running to win?
Both. Both. You know, I'm running a small campaign. I don't have the funds that the major party candidates have, but I've been trying to get out in some of the candidate forums and some of the invitations that I've received, and just talk to the people on some of the major issues that are fundamental to our constitutional democratic republic. And my whole campaign has been about focusing us back on those principles of liberty and trying to secure those blessings of liberty.
I still think that some of the things that we'll get into here policy-wise, you're not a traditional libertarian on some of these things. I mean, we'll find out, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's begin first with your thoughts on criminal justice reform. We've obviously seen a spike in crime in Arkansas. Public safety is something I'm sure you're hearing a lot about when you're traveling around the state and talking to people. Give me what you think are some of the root causes of why we are seeing what we're seeing right now.
Well, one of the root causes, I've talked about gangs before. The gang leadership has been obliterated, and some of the young members of the gangs don't have the restraint that some of the older members of the gangs had. Them getting wiped out has definitely had that vacuum, that power vacuum. So we have to continue that pursuit of taking care of that underground criminal activity. Now, other aspects of criminal activity and trying to eradicate it, it definitely starts with education. Mm-hmm. We not only have to invest in education, but we also need, as it says, it takes a village to raise a child. There are some children that might be kind of drifting and wandering and not know the direction they want to go in life. Well, there's a way to help them. Some of the people that have skills, that are plumbers, take some of those young men and women under your wing and give them a direction and a path to go to. Snatch them and rescue them from this criminal activity.
So I guess, and I think that I kind of follow along with this philosophy. If you commit a crime, you're in jail, they'll say you've committed some sort of felony offense. You can't get a job when you come out because you got a felony on your record there, and you don't have maybe the skill that you need to do something like that. You've been working in a lot of the prisons over your career. Do you think that we are successfully training those that are incarcerated when they come out to have the skill set that they need to find employment?
Well, one of the big issues that I have had with some of the difficulties that inmates face when re-entering society, particularly those that have been barbers for, 14, 20 years, doing that every day within the prisons, and when they come out to society and want to try to exercise that skill that they have, they face those difficulties with occupational licensing and things like that.
Would you change that if you were governor? I mean, would you provide some sort of exemption in there? I mean, how would you make things different?
Yes, sir. I would try to provide an alternate path for inmates to find those jobs, be productive members of society, so they don't go back to prison, because 80 to 90% of the men and women that are incarcerated, they're going to be getting out. So we need to be focusing on training them up so they don't come in that revolving door, just in and out, in and out. And another thing I'd like to add is we need to find a way to up the mental health treatment in our state, especially when it comes to drug abuse and drug and substance abuse and substance uses, because putting them in prison is not going to help them succeed. Because of the criminal element inside of our prisons, the people that are trying to get off of those drugs is very difficult, because a lot of drugs are in the prisons. And so you have to separate them completely from the inmate population. So if I hear talks about new beds being built, those beds should go toward helping those that are getting ready to get out be able to function in society so they don't commit any more crimes.
Yeah. Tell me, I guess just maybe answer this more blunt question here. Do you think that you would be tough on crime if you were governor of the state of Arkansas? Or do you see throwing out the system and doing something that really is a rebrand, a restart in terms of how things go? Because you're opposed to the death penalty. You think that there's been some people that have been executed unfairly, unjustly, because evidence has come out. But I think people want to know that their governor is going to be somebody who is tough on criminals that are doing things. Are you tough on crime?
One thing that I've learned working in the prisons is that it takes a bit of both in order to set someone on the right path. Sometimes you need to show a little gentleness. Sometimes you have to be firm, fair, and consistent, as they always taught us. And as a governor, if elected, I plan to be firm, fair, and consistent. People that break the law, that harm other people, need to be punished. Those that have committed what we like to call victimless crimes in the libertarian philosophy spheres, we should not be going after them. But yes, we'll be tough on real crime, murderers, rapists, the people that have harmed someone else, that taken their property. We're definitely going to be very strict on those things.
All right, we got to take a quick commercial break. I want to come back. I want to talk some taxes with you. I want to talk about an idea you got on the education front, too. Will you stick around?
Yes, sir.
All right,
absolutely.
Ricky Dale Harrington. He's the Libertarian candidate for Arkansas governor. We're back right after this.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Just for the record, we interviewed Democrat Chris Jones about 2 weeks ago on this program. We have made efforts to interview Republican Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Over the past 22 months, we have extended 28 requests for a sit-down interview. We've offered to do them anytime, any place that works for her schedule. About 2 weeks ago, her campaign said they would, quote, respectfully decline the one-on-one interview opportunity with us before Election Day. For the record, the invitation stands. We just wanted our audience to know that we have made significant efforts to give her an unedited, open platform to present her policies, much like we are doing with Ricky Dale Harrington, the Libertarian candidate for governor today. What do you make of the fact that Sarah Huckabee Sanders won't engage in some of these interviews? She seems to stay in a safe space of Fox News and very programmed personal events.
Well, it's a control, obviously, from a political standpoint. You know, you're going out there, you're talking to people, you want to be able to mitigate any sort of ramifications that might happen to you if you have one of those moments that are quite prevalent for politicians on stage and things like that. So I can see the political strategy from that point, but when it comes to wanting to be governor of Arkansas, we have to talk to the people. That's what our government is about. It's a participatorium of all of us. We don't have rulers. The people are the rulers.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about your policy on taxes. You have said that you want to end the grocery tax. The grocery tax has been reduced down to the final 1/8 of a cent on grocery taxes. That'll have to be removed by by a constitutional amendment. Are you going to lead a constitutional amendment campaign to do that? You could do that whether you're governor or not.
Yes, sir, I could. As I've said during that debate, I felt it was an immoral tax to begin with, and on principle, I don't care if it's an eighth of a cent, it should be totally gone.
Yeah. How would you replace the revenue for Parks and Tourism and the Game and Fish Commission, which is what the majority of that eighth of a cent funds?
Maybe we can turn it to you know, a service, a fee for service, or a fee for being able to go to those places. You know, sometimes I might be speaking from my own mind and not trying to project on others, but there's a lot of benefits that we get from those parks, and if there was a slight price increase on that, why not? Why not pay for it? I love going to the diamond mine all the time anyway.
How many diamonds have you found?
None.
None. All right, well, keep going. So, yeah, and also, too, I mean, I guess you would have to advocate for higher, you know, license fees for hunting and fishing and stuff like that to replace that lost revenue, too. Is that what I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would that be an option?
Well, I really wouldn't want to do it, but I want to be pragmatic about things. The hunting license that we have here in Arkansas is probably one of the cheapest I've ever. I'm a Texas native, and them hunting licenses over there are extremely expensive. And whenever I came to Arkansas and I saw $10 for a hunting license, I knew I wanted to stay here and live.
All right, too. You also have talked about phasing out the state sales tax. Again, I would think that you have the same logic about, you know, consumers, and that it's difficult on people, particularly lower income people, to have to pay that extra sales tax. But that sales tax constitutes a huge percentage of state government funding. Where do you make up the difference for that? Because I know on the latest general revenue report, it was almost 50% of state general revenues. That's a lot of money. You going to cut state government in a big way, or are you going to replace that revenue by raising some other tax?
I would like to cut spending and cut some of the executive branch.
You got some specifics on that? I mean, or is this just in theory?
Honestly, I'm telling you the truth, it's theory.
Okay.
Because the truth of the matter is, you don't really get to see that whole picture until you're right there at the mountaintop. Anybody that's ever been governor has never been governor unless they've been governor. Yeah. There's just the truth of it there.
Well, I'd push back on you a little bit on that. The state budget is a public document. They debate it almost year-round up at the state legislature. You can look at the state budget and determine, here's what we spend on education, here's what we spend on higher education, here's what we spend on prisons and public safety, here's what we spend on health and human services. That's about 95% of the budget right there. You could look at some of that right now and give me a couple line items that you think that you could cut. I don't have it in front of me, but you could do that. You don't have to wait till you're governor to do that.
Well, first off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the boards and commissions, and there's about $40 million there that's dedicated to boards and commissions. And, you know, my thinking is, if you're on that type of board there, is it possible that you be volunteering for it? Or, you know, how are we spending that money for the boards and commissions? Is it really helping the people? Or is it maybe, you know, money going somewhere and we don't really know what is really actually being done about it?
I think in theory it's regulating those different, you know, industries and occupations that people have. I mean, do you want to get rid of the plumbers and licensing board? Do you want to get rid of the engineers board? I mean, don't you think those things need some regulation?
Well, one of my campaign platforms has been occupational licensing reform and trying to reduce some of the extra burdens for people to be able to get into those fields there. We need standards. Obviously, we need standards to make sure that people are competent in what they do, and also making sure that the people are safe. That's what the boards are for, if I am understanding it correctly, and that they oversee you know, those professions, that they're on a professional level. You know, sometimes people don't have the money to go to college, but they may have the ability to acquire the knowledge and then demonstrate that they're competent in it. So we want to try to see if we can rearrange some of those occupational licensing laws or the administrations of occupational licensing to where right now the economy is really hurting. People might have money to go back to school, but they might have the ability to go into a new profession.
Let's talk about, that's another, I think, an interesting thought that you've thrown out in terms of your platform. You've talked about reinstituting something called the State Guard, where people would trade basically public service for 2 years of community college, I'm presuming for free. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, sir.
That plan.
That idea comes from what's going on right now in the global sphere. With the war going on in Ukraine, who knows if it might expand into something more, and the Arkansas National Guard can be federalized. And we still have to deal with natural disasters. We still have to deal with other type of events here in Arkansas. Well, what are we going to do whenever that big force right there is gone, maybe to fight in a global conflict, which I hope does not happen. But that's my main reasonings for that, to reinstate the Guard, is to have an extra service force to be able to take up the slack in case Arkansas is hurting. Providing those 2 years of education at a state school, you know, we could be having more nurses, more plumbers, and more people that are working in trade jobs helping Arkansans.
There'll be a price tag on that. I'm going to assume you hadn't put a price tag to that yet. So in terms of how much that would cost to, say, develop 2,000 or 3,000 people to basically get free community college in exchange for some sort of State Guard work right there.
Yes, sir.
You got a number on that?
No number. Being honest with you, no number. I've taken a look at the Texas State Guard and tried to research how they, because Texas, 22 states out of the union have state guards. And I understand how some people may be fearful of a governor talking about reinstating the Guard. Only the legislature has the power to do that. But I would like to put a plan for reinstating it for the security of a state.
All right, he's Ricky Dale Harrington. He is your Libertarian candidate for Arkansas governor. Always good to visit with you. Always find our conversations refreshing. And remember, if this run for governor thing doesn't work out, I think you could farm yourself out for some funerals and maybe even just some uplifting motivational speeches as well. So you got the pipes, you know, as they say. So.
Well, I'm always trying to be of service.
All right. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Best of luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Well, a few weeks ago, we profiled the U.S. Congress District 1 race between incumbent Republican Congressman Rick Crawford and Democratic State Representative Monty Hodges. Let's look to the 3rd Congressional District today. Republican incumbent Congressman Steve Womack, Democratic nominee Lauren Mallett Hayes, and Libertarian Michael Kalagius. They all participated in the Arkansas PBS debate last week.
Well, it's a great question because everybody that lives pretty much in the 3rd District, but certainly in the extreme northwest part of our state, understands that we have about 30-plus people a day moving into the area. And how do you cope with that kind of growth? You know, I have a background as a mayor. I was the mayor of Rogers for 12 years, as a lot of people know. And so I was right in the middle of all of that growth projection, and it continues to this day. What you have to have is you have to have a good strategy, and I think the Northwest Arkansas community has a pretty good strategy for how do we develop, where are these road networks going to be, what are we going to be able to do insofar as funding a lot of these particular issues. And, you know, fortunately, the people of Northwest Arkansas and in Arkansas in general with Issue 1 have taxed themselves to be able to provide for a lot of this infrastructure. But you're still going to need a federal partner. You're still going to have to be able to do things like build a bridge over the Arkansas River and finish 13 miles of I-49 and 412 in Northwest Arkansas. Still a lot of work to be done, and we have to have the funding to do it, and the federal partner is going to be necessary.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Mallett Hayes, 1 minute.
So we know that the growth in Northwest Arkansas is projected to be 1 million by 2046. We continue to talk about infrastructure and the needs there, and we have passed a bipartisan bill to bring money into the state for that development. But one key piece that we're missing is public transportation in the form of commuter rail. I think connecting the Northwest Arkansas corridor to Fort Smith and then on down to Little Rock will be a significant improvement for our area as far as the rapid growth we're going to see. When you look at the cost of living compared to other metropolitan areas that have a much better public transportation system. Comparatively, the cost is the same, and yet we don't have the same access. So my biggest responsibility would be to help build and figure out how we get that public transportation into the Northwest Arkansas River Valley region.
Thank you. Mr. Kalagias.
Yeah, I have seen Northwest Arkansas pretty much explode in growth, and it has been tough to keep up with that growth. Most of that, as far as infrastructure goes and roads go, we can meet that with taxes that we're already paying. So we do have fuel taxes that should be going strictly to roads, and oftentimes it doesn't. It goes to build airplane hangars at executive airports, or it goes to, build buildings somewhere instead of going into the actual infrastructure and the roads and bridges where it's needed. So some of that we can clean up that way. We will have to see as more and more electric cars get on the road, find a way that make sure that they're also paying their fair share, however that goes, and I'm sure that could be debated in the halls of Congress on how we want to do that. But Northwest Arkansas isn't the only place that's struggling with this. So, and especially when it comes to housing. Housing is getting tight everywhere. So, and a lot of that is because the government keeps getting in the way. We have so many different restrictions on who can build where and how much it has to, how big it has to be and what features it has to have and how many permits you have to get. And
I have to call time.
Those are your 3rd District congressional candidates: Republican incumbent Congressman Steve Womack, Democratic nominee Lauren Mallett Hayes, and Libertarian Michael Kalagias. We're back to wrap up right after this.